move on. Let's jump into our viewer mailbag.
What do we got for mail today?
Okay. Once again, this is an actual question from an actual listener because clearly when you hear this question, you'll know that I'm not smart enough to make this one up.
I can attest to that.
And this is to a listener who would prefer to remain anonymous because, after all, who would want to be associated with
intelligent questions?
Yeah, I don't know. Here we go. If ESG / sustainability issues are meant to materialize for companies over the long term, does a hedge fund shorting strategy to be against sustainability laggards make sense to you? Whoa, that's okay.
All right,
Should I repeat that? You got that?
Kind of. Let's back up.
Yeah.
The first thing to understand is a shorting strategy, because if you don't know what a shorting, it's basically where you bet against the stock. It's like going to the craps table and betting on the don't come line instead of, like, what, I don't remember what the opposite one is, but you bet against the table. Nobody likes the short seller.
Sound like assholes.
But there is a theory, there is kind of an ESG, environmental social governance theory, that you short laggards because, if they suck at all this ESG stuff, eventually they're going to have some event happen and kills them. Right. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that strategy, that as a hedge fund strategy, is that these things materialize over a long time frame, as the question implies, right? Like a long-term strategy means you might be sitting short and it's really expensive and you might not see that event come out. What's interesting that's really happening is actually not a shorting strategy, and it's not necessarily in public markets. What's happening is investors are buying up sort of adaptation hedges, right? Like so they go out. Last year, we were going to write about this. Last year, there are all these investors who are buying up land in the U.S. with water rights. Like farmland with water rights. And they weren't using it necessarily to farm. They were using it for the water rights. And it's not like, a farmer Ben. It's like Saudi Arabia is buying up U.S. land with water rights because there's a recognition that water is going to be an extremely scarce asset. And if it actually gets priced, you've hedged your adaptation. There are now water barons, and that's just one example. There's like a half dozen examples of like hedging yourself against extreme weather, climate, or ESG things by buying the thing that people are going to need when shit hits the fan. That to me is actually the short-term play that that most asset managers aren't sort of like built for, but is really going to happen, and it's not getting better. Like you can sit on your short as long as you want, but this is where you're going to make money probably in the short term. That is not that is not advice, by the way. Don't listen to a thing I just said.
I like that.